Thank you very much. Just a few words about myself. I'm not an energy lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer. I worked 27 years at the Italian Regulatory Authority, and now I work at ERA, that is an association of energy regulatory authorities, mainly out of Europe. ERA is based in Budapest for historical reasons, so I'm happy to be here. I'm not exactly the right person to speak in energy law conference, but I will try. Thank you very much for accepting this talk that is based on a paper that is available in ERA website. As an engineer, I start from technical side, and I thank Professor Cameron that say that there must be a dialogue with technology. I also think that is also one of my conclusions. I start from a very important white paper from US. NERC is the Reliability Council in the US, which prepares the reliability standards that after a process, a duly process, become standards for FERC. It's extremely relevant. We don't have such a thing in Europe. Could be similar to Senelec, but not exactly the same. And in this paper, there are a lot of information, but recently has been published, very recently, end of August, a paper by OpenAI, NVIDIA, and Microsoft, from which I took this very impressive graph, because we think that a data center has a flat consumption. Nothing is more wrong. These jumps that you can see happens every 50 seconds. It's incredible, but every jump is 200% of the basic point. So it's really the nightmare of every system operator. And there are sources of disturbances for resonance frequency too complex explaining, but not this is the point. The point is that typically system operators put requirements on generators, but from the frequency idea of balancing demand and supply, having a loss in generation or having a problem in demand is exactly the same. Spain collapsed for a loss in generation, but if you have such a problem on the demand, the collapse is the same. Or, I mean, the same is the risk. And this white paper from NERC is only the first step, is clearly written in this extremely interesting paper, a first step in a progressive path towards new standards for large loads. This is the title of the paper. A second viewpoint is the topic of demand surge. There is another interesting paper from Yale University, written also with an Italian professor, Professor Floridi. And also this recent study from RMI, where I extracted this small chart, says that in US, the percentage of increase is doubling, but in Europe is tripling. Anyway, data centers are not exactly the first, in absolute term, the first top source of load growth, because transport, electric mobility is expected to be the very first. But the climate impact is really the point, because the growth of load could be covered, covered through fossil fuel generation unit, or where nuclear is available through nuclear. And this is the dilemma, let's say. Consider that, this may be anecdotic, but just to say that a single prompt, in average, a single prompt requires 10 times more electricity than a single query in Google. This is the ratio in average. And as it has been already said, in Ireland, the percentage of consumption today is 20%, 21%, but is projected to be 30% in 7 years. Netherlands 5%, Germany 3%, France and Italy around 2%. Hungary was said today 1 point something. Well, I examined some, let's say, cases of proposal or actual regulation. One interesting one, although it's still a proposal and also very debated, I would say even controversial somehow, comes from the Irish regulator, so I would say the epicenter of the problem. Irish regulator is named CRU, I suppose is I don't know, Commission Regulatory or something else. Utility, that's Commission of Regulation of Utility or some like. This consultation paper was issued in February 25, and so far the final decision has not been taken. And this, as we are in September, probably is a sign of difficulty. But it's extremely, extremely strong proposal. And I could say, far from Ireland, we have in the room a person that is much more informed than me, is probably too strong. Energy self-sufficiency, so a new data center should have dispatchable generation equal to maximum capacity. That's a very strong idea. They don't care which technology, but must be dispatchable. If thermal shall be future-proofing, therefore shall be ready for hydrogen, or to be, in case of intermittency, shall be coupled with storage. There are many other requirements. Of course, I cannot summarize such a complex proposal in a few words, but for instance, as it can be said, very important, the relationship in energy sector, not only electricity. So there is also a part about recovery of heat for district heating in this proposal of the Irish energy regulator. There is the issue of localization, and there is also the idea that if in saturated zones the connection can be refused, and there is the idea that somebody in the roundtable said about the active consumer, so pushing to flexibility. Flexibility means to reduce capacity, so means to reduce service, if we are in operation. If we are in learning, is a different point. Another interesting, let's say, experience, although it's really very recent, July 25, so there is not yet implementation or really the very first steps, is this decreto of the Ministry of Energy Transition in Spain that is based on the idea of not maybe abandoning, maybe is wrong in this slide, but overpassing the idea of first come, first served, and to have an index of merit for connection of large load. This index is based on the greenhouse gas emissions, but can be also integrated with other considerations about electrification of processes and green energy vectors. So it's a rather complex idea. It's not only the Energy Directive PUE, like in the German law. Consider that in Spain, the expected evolution, the pipeline of data center is tripling in 2 years only, from 2024 to 2026, from 200 megawatt to 730 megawatt. And it's very, here is written in too little, but it's interesting in the initial consideration of the decree, it's clearly written that they need sustainability requirements because there has been, I don't know, sorry, the English words, the movement to accaparramento, I don't know, sorry, something to have too much capacity for few operators, let's say. So sorry for my bad English. Interesting cases also in US. I go short, but there is a very important decision some months ago, I would say before Trump, in Pennsylvania. Amazon proposed, the utility proposed for an Amazon data center to connect, let's say, behind the meter, so in co-location with a nuclear existing unit, Susquehanna, in a data center, rather big, and the Federal Commission refused such a proposal with a split vote, 2 in favor of the refusal, 1 against the refusal, and the one against was the president. He was a Democratic, and he wrote a dissenting opinion that is available. Very interesting. The anecdotic story is that President Trump substituted that Democratic president that voted against the refusal, and now there is the strategy winning the race for AI, and the substitute was the commissioner that voted for refusing, in favor of the refusal, but now the winning the race for AI says, hey guys, connect the data center. So everything, independence of regulator is a difficult matter, especially when appointments don't follow a bipartisan procedure, I think. I say that because in Italy now we are going to appoint the new board. In Texas, it's interesting because if the data center is above 75 megawatts, so medium-sized data center, there is a special procedure. Flexibility is important. They point to active grid participant, and there is also a load reduction program. I don't enter in details. I would say to skip this because this is a more would say theoretical part of the paper, but substantially I took a taxonomy from AI regulation, not energy for AI regulation, that is based on these 4 columns: prohibition, process, input-based, output-based. I would say that these are rather general concepts, so I used for classifying the cases of the paper, Ireland, Spain, Germany. There are also others, both in Europe and in US. And what happens? It seems that the most comprehensive regulation more or less use the full array of tools. And this is interesting because it means that substantially is a so complex matter that the full toolbox must be used by regulators, or sometimes not exactly regulators, because in Germany is a law, the regulators is not so active. In Ireland is the regulator, in Spain is a mix. So who is the player changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And of course, it's totally confirmed, this is absolutely not a new, that European Union and the US have totally different logic, ex-ante regulation, case by case, adjudication, but of course you know, so I skip. I conclude, which are the policy recommendations, if I may, but humble. First come, first served is the principle of non-discrimination, but substantially this principle probably that is very, I would say, dear to energy law science, probably is now in the final stage of his life, maybe, no? I spend a word that is environmental constitutionalism. So probably sustainability is more important in our written or non-written constitution. In Italy, there is a principle of environmental constitutionalism. It was introduced in the constitution some years ago, but maybe I'm not a lawyer, so it's a dream of citizen. It's a dream of citizen. Yes, but maybe it's only a few. However, bridge the gap between AI per se regulation and energy policy. So far they are sectoral silos, I don't know, and we have to bridge, I think it's needed to bridge. Technology and good rules together can save the system, events like Spain can be avoided only through a good. Regulators are extremely relevant for that. Just to say that, for instance, our association will have a meeting of all presidents, all chairmen of our associated authority in a few weeks, Ankara, Turkey, and we will discuss about the regulatory lessons of Spanish and Portuguese blackout. Portuguese was totally innocent. They have their own TSO, they have their own generation. They were totally good in voltage regulation, no problems at all. They imported the blackout. And nobody knows. They always talk of Spain, but there is an innocent, a victim of that. No? Yeah? That's true, huh? Nobody talks of you. Only Spain. And last, I conclude. Thank you very much. The paper is available, but if you go on our web page, first web page, erranet.org, and you scroll down in the bottom, you find. Thank you.